It took me 4 years to learn to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child. These famous words by one of the world's greatest ever artists, Pablo Picasso, ring with a pertinence when we consider the work of the CoBRA art movement. Grounded in a rejection of the horrors of the World War, the artists involved were looking to make art with the intention of a kind of spontaneous expression. Experimental, colourful and expressive works were made. The art of children as well as outsider art came to be favoured as artists looked to playful depictions of animals, exuberant colour and an apolitical stance to art. Of course, the very aim to be apolitical is political in itself, but the CoBRA artists did succeed in the strength of the notion of whether or not a pure idea or untainted art form can actually exist. The movement happened in response to Surrealism's notion of automatism. This involved allowing the subconscious to take over the direction of the drawing hand. One of the few non-ism movements of the 20th century, the unusual denomination of CoBRA was coined from the countries from which the founding members came: Copenhagen, Brussels, Amsterdam. These founding members were Karel Appel, Constant, Corneille, Christian d'Outremont, Asger Jorn, and Joseph Noiret, though art historian Karen Korczynski argues in her chapter Ferlov, Mancoba, Thankyou and the Art of CoBRA that these artists have taken centre stage in discourse surrounding the group, overlooking that of the more marginalised contributors to the movement. In particular, this chapter looks at 3 artists: Sonja Ferlov, Shinichi Tajiri, and Ernest Mancoba. Mancoba was the subject of an earlier video on this channel. CoBRA art rejects skill in favour of spontaneity and exuberance as a dialectical response to the violence and inhumanity of an inequitable society. The CoBRA artists sought in their work what Sonja Ferlov called allmänt gällande uttryck, literally a generally applicable expression, or just expression for all. Ferlov notes that such expression is always precarious. There will always be critics who make it into a special, individual and fantastic expression instead of an expression for all. It's worth noting that an artist such as Ferlov, who was more on the margins of the movement due to her gender, would express more of a want to open up the creators and audience of art, which at that time was limited very much so in terms of renowned and established subjects. Artists like Asger Jorn painted works such as Letter to My Son, a clear indication of the inclination to the language of children. He was expressing in colour and image over text. The multitude of figures mimics the multitude of colours, which fuse to convey a passion as well as a kind of deliberate lack of calm, which remind us of the vivacity of children's energy. Karel Appel's Hip Hip Hurrah merges human and animal attributes across a series of figures, all of which face us. The front-on figure is evocative again of the drawings of children, along with the free-form space and the simplified figurative depictions. The vivid opaque colours, set against the black backdrop, give off a kind of ritualistic image. There is a fire in outstretched hands that evoke dancing. Sonja Ferlov Mancoba was a Danish artist who trained as an artist in Paris. She married Ernest Mancoba in 1942, and the two of them were some of the founding members of the CoBRA movement. It is worth noting here that all the artists discussed in this video are not exclusive to the style of CoBRA. This is merely the subject through which we will encounter them today. Ferlov's enigmatic abstract sculpture conveys expression for all, by means of organic abstract forms spontaneously developing but referencing their cosmopolitan inspirations, in a restrained aesthetic that resists the aggressively masculine expression of the more well-known CoBRA artists. We can look at Ferlov's Owl, which depicts a soft and abstract depiction of the bird which explores the plaster medium in a range of forms, sharp in shape and smooth in surface. The National Gallery of Denmark note how she believed in the sense of community that cut across different cultures. Being married to South African artist Ernest Mancoba, she was regularly exposed to images of a new visual language from South Africa. When the often rather masculine approaches of primitivism were garnering critical success, Ferlov's abstraction was of a softer kind, internal, anatomical almost. Her take on spontaneous and experimental forms in abstract sculpture were not aggressive, rather relatable and pensive. We can see this same disposition in her untitled painting from 1980. The suggestion of a face composed of scribbles is typical of juvenile image-making. The colours are less intense than that of Jean and Appel's works we discussed. Even the figure in the work has a subtler presence, hiding a little beneath the childlike mark-making. Sonja Ferlov's marriage to Ernest Mancoba saw a great cross-pollination in their work, but the matter of appropriative methods surrounds discussions on Ferlov today. There is a brilliant debate between two artists and a curator on this at kunstkritik.com, which I will link below. Sonja Ferlov Mancoba thrived within the ideology of CoBRA as an art for all, in a time when marginalised subjects felt their precarity. The question, however, remains. Did the CoBRA artist succeed in producing a purely juvenile art, one free and untainted by the prejudices of everyday life?